What's up, everybody? On today's podcast, I've got a very special challenge for you. Let's see if you can hang with me. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson. I'm a ballroom dance professional, a life coach, and a peak performance expert. I'm part of a group of motivated people who are dedicated to attaining emotional mastery and unlocking our full potential. We don't believe others are responsible for how we feel. In fact, we don't believe anyone can make us feel anything. We believe in the magic of ballroom dance. It has taught us how to improve our bodies, challenge our minds, and inspire our souls. And in return, I want to share those lessons with the world. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm so excited you came and joined me today. As you heard in the intro, I've got a special challenge. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what this challenge is all about. It's pretty simple and straightforward. We're constantly talking about ways we can improve our life. We're talking about ways that we can do the little things to get a little bit better each day, and there's all the classics. There's reading books, there's listening to podcasts like you're here doing right now. There's listening to motivational speeches, and there's all the little things that you can do to improve your life. And those are all great, and I hope you keep doing those. But along the way, there's these little challenges that we have to overcome, and that we should try to overcome these maybe little things that we want to improve on in our life. And one that's stood out to me recently has been one that I've been watching, and I've seen it present, like even in my extended family through years, and watching as I've grown up with the adults around me, and seeing people do this, and I just think, gosh, there's so much more to life than allowing yourself to get stuck in this little loop. So what I want to talk to you about today is this idea of being stubborn. In so many instances, there are great outlets and great uses for being stubborn. And you see it all the time. In fact, sometimes it's the saving grace for when you have a child that won't listen to you and follow your requests. Sometimes they're just being stubborn, and you look at it and you go, well, at least the saving grace is that when they decide what they want, they're going to be stubborn and go get it. And I totally get that. I have one of my 4 children is something else. She's headstrong and loves to get what she wants. And I know someday as she grows up, she's going to be ultra successful because of that stubbornness. She decides what she wants, and she's going to go after it and get it at all costs. Sometimes that poses challenges for us as parents along the way, but I can appreciate the tenacity and the energy that she can have once she puts her mind and commits to what it is that she wants. On the flip side, being stubborn can really get you into a whole lot of bad places, and sometimes we think we're so right about so many things that we end up being stubborn. Now, sometimes that feeling of being right and wanting to be correct about a situation or something that's going on is warranted, because maybe you've had some experience with that. Maybe you've had years of experience, and maybe if you're like me, maybe you've messed up a whole lot of times, and so sometimes through your failures, you've learned to be stubborn about certain subjects and really hold your ground and say, okay, no, I'm not going to do that again because I've had that experience. But I think sometimes we get into the wave of being stubborn and of being so headstrong about something that we start to do it with other elements and other areas of our life where maybe we haven't had those failures, or maybe we haven't had those experiences to warrant taking such a bold and committed stand on something. I see it all the time in our older generation. Sometimes because they're older and wiser, they know so much more than all of us, right? And sometimes they get a little bit more stubborn about the things that they've experienced. And sometimes they're not open to new ideas or new ways of doing things. And sometimes they're just plain stubborn. And that's understandable. We all kind of follow suit. And I think sometimes we learn that from our elders. Because they've kind of gotten sick of dealing with new situations, and or they're sick of dealing with things that they've already experienced and have decided they know best about. And so they don't have as much energy around dealing with the little things that come up and with making adjustments to how things could be. And so what I want to challenge you to do today is to really think about some of the places that you're stubborn in your world and in your life. And think about how it is that that affects you. I mean, in some instances, like with any emotional state, some instances that emotional state can serve you. And so I'm sure that in many ways, being stubborn about some things in your life, taking a stand about a belief that you have, something like that can really serve you and can really do well for you. But what areas in your world and in your life aren't serving you when you're being stubborn? What things have you been stubborn about recently, where you can maybe look back and reflect, have some introspection on what you're doing, and maybe ask yourself, gosh, is there anything really valuable coming from being stubborn in this particular situation? I think that for all of us, there are places that we can look at in our world and kind of go, you know what, I don't need to be that stubborn. I know for those of you out there leading teams of people and running businesses, that it's really easy to get into this place where you see the direction that you'd like to go with your team, with your company, whatever it might be, and so you get very stubborn about heading that direction. And sometimes it's easy in that mode not to hear the new suggestions or a different way of doing things, because sometimes we think we just know it all. We know it best because we've been there and we've done that. And so it's really easy to get stuck in that stubborn mode, in that place where you just can't improve and you can't make any sort of headway at all. So I'd like you to think about a few places and do it right now. Don't just say, yeah, I'll do that later. Do it right now. If you need to, you can pause. I mean, you can always pause the audio. This is a podcast, so it's really easy. If you need to, just pause the tape right now and think about it. Think about what things you're being stubborn on right now that are probably hurting your life or hurting your experience. Are you in a position where you're being stubborn and not being able to experience time with somebody because you're wanting to have things your way and really there's no need for it? And that's really the key, right? Is that you got to look at some of the things that you're being stubborn about and say, hey, do I just want it my way for no real reason, or can I just let it go? In dance, I as you guys know, I work with a lot of dancers, and there's a lot of partnership development and relationship development in these partnerships. And in so many instances, there are multiple ways to do a figure or to execute a step or even a routine and a feel for that step or pattern. And I oftentimes am very guilty of being the one that goes to the couple and says, well, you can do it this way, or you could do it this way, or maybe you could even do it this way or this way. And so they end up with more options when they come to me about that subject than they had before they started. Now, in one way, this is really useful. In another way, sometimes it debilitates them, and all of a sudden they're going, as a partnership, one of the people in the partnership is saying, well, I really like it this way, and the other one's saying, well, I really like it this way, and they're opposite ways, or they're different. And they look at me and they go, well, you decide. And at about that point, I usually look back and say, well, yeah, sorry, no, that's not my decision to make. This is their art, this is their craft, this is their decision to make. And in many instances, there is no great way to make a choice. One person likes one thing, the other person likes another thing. And this is such a life lesson. We have so many relationships, whether it be with your grandchildren or whether it be with your spouse or even with somebody that you work with. There are oftentimes multiple choices to do something different ways. And as we've learned in dance, sometimes you just got to get out a coin and flip it and go with whichever side lands up. And that's it. And that's it. Sometimes there is no good option if both options are good. And that's something to think about. And I think sometimes we get into these stubborn states purely because we think our option is the best. But if we can get outside of ourselves just a little bit and kind of look around and say, well, is that other option just as good? And maybe I just want to do it my way because I want the significance of doing it my way. Then maybe you can step back for a second and go, you know what, I'm going to let go of some of those moments where I'm being stubborn about how I want things to be and allow for some other ideas and some other directions to enlighten you or to open up your mind. At the very least, when we talk about emotional mastery, we talk so much about being in control of our emotions. And sometimes people do things to spite themselves, right? What's that old saying that don't cut off your nose to spite your face? What a funny saying, right? But it makes a lot of sense. You know, you don't want to spite yourself, right? And do something that's against what you ultimately would like. And so think about it. What's your ultimate goal? Do you want to spend more time with somebody? Do you want to be more significant? Do you want to have more certainty in your world? Or maybe you want to be a little bit more wilder and risky and free. Maybe you need more love in your world. What is it that you need yourself personally, right? And of course, if you aren't familiar with the 6 human needs, you should look it up. It's something that Anthony Robbins has taught for years, and he's a master at it. But it'll change your perspective on things, and that's kind of what we just went through. We kind of talked about some of those things. But find out what it is that you need. What is it that you need? What is one of those needs that you need and you need to fulfill? And stop being stubborn around it. Maybe open up and allow things to be done differently than you would do it, so that you can head towards your ultimate goal of being amenable and adaptable to change and to different things that are going on in your world. So that's your challenge for the day, and maybe even for the remainder of the week. Try to go about your world and identify. I mean, even if you could just interrupt your pattern, even if you could just identify the place where you were being stubborn, that it wasn't necessary, then you can improve just that little bit. And honestly, I don't need you to eat the whole cow in one bite. I mostly just need you to take a little piece at a time and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to get better at this. I'm going to get better at being stubborn in the right moments when I know that I have experience in that thing and that I have knowledge that will save us time and save us energy or heartache. And then being less stubborn in those moments where there really is nothing to gain. There's really nothing to gain, and you have to evaluate that and think about that and say, okay, what really would I gain from being this way? You know, I once heard a parent, you know, as I was walking around a store and I was in the line waiting to check out, and I once heard a parent disciplining their child, and they were basically talking to the other parent as they sent the kid off to run an errand for him, and they said, well, I'm just going to, you know, have a silent treatment here, a silent direction of how I'm going to handle this, and they'll learn eventually. And I thought to myself, well, gosh, that's pretty stubborn. You know, you don't have to go about it silently to be able to make an impact. Why don't you just talk to the kid? Just tell him, hey, look, the lesson learned here is this, and I'd love if you could really adapt, and I'll adapt, and we'll both do this together. You know, we don't need to do things in games. We don't have to be stubborn, and we don't have to play a game to get the message or the lesson across, whether it be to our children or maybe to our colleagues at work. Maybe it's time to step back from being unnecessarily stubborn and take a different point of view, take a different perspective on it, and see what things we can learn. And I say we because we are all guilty of being too stubborn too much of the time. And the hard part, I think, is just finding that balance. You know, you want to go after a goal, be stubborn and relentless in the pursuit of that goal. And I appreciate that. And at times, though, you have to step back and you have to let go of that guard and say, am I being stubborn for any sort of reason that is actually helping my cause of attaining the needs and the emotional state that I would like to live in on a regular basis. And if you can't do that, then please reach out and let us know. We want to help. And it is challenging. It's a challenge to be able to step back from yourself and go, you know what, I am being too stubborn and there is no need for it. There is no ultimate outcome, and I'm just doing it because it's easy to do. So that's your challenge. That's your challenge for today. I'd love to hear about some of your experiences. So go and try it out and let us know. Make sure you tell your friends. If there's somebody that really would like this podcast, let them know. Share it with them. Take a screenshot. Send it over to them. We're on all of the outlets, whether it's iTunes or Podbean or Stitcher, anywhere you get your iTunes or anywhere you get your podcasts, even Spotify. You can find our podcast or go to our Facebook page at Michael Johnson Official on Facebook, and you'll find all of them there. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think about the podcast. Let us know that you're enjoying it so that we know to keep making more. And I hope you enjoyed today's challenge. Go do it and let us know how it goes. Good luck.
Are you loving Majic for Life? Please like and share our podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want more magic for your life? Join me for some great Facebook Lives on the official Facebook page at Michael A. Johnson Official.